now. So let's go on with the video.
That, quote, all requests from qualified news reporting services to film or photograph on Postal Service premises must be referred to the local public affairs and communications representative.
Okay, let's be clear on what's being said here. Is it saying that all news agencies must submit requests before doing any kind of reporting? It is absolutely not. It's basically saying that if you require interviews, if you require special access, if you require us to do anything outside of our normal daily activity, daily work, then you must submit a request. And if you do submit a request, they must go to the Public Affairs and Communications representative. But nowhere in there does it say all news agencies must submit a request before reporting in the post office or on the post office. Okay, now the next section it gets into, I'm not sure why, it's photography and filming for personal use. It has no bearing on
Informal
anything.
snapshots from handheld cameras for personal use may be allowed at the postmaster's discretion, provided that there is no disruption to Postal Service operations and that the pictures are taken from areas accessible to the public.
Now I want you to listen very carefully to this Supreme Court case that he brings in, and I want you to notice that none of the things that he mentions has anything to do with the right to free press.
The U.S. Supreme Court upheld a Poster 7 provision prohibiting soliciting alms and contributions, campaigning for election to any public office, collecting private debts, commercial soliciting and vending, and displaying or distributing commercial advertising on postal premises, particularly on a walkway from the parking lot to the entrance. In reaching...
Okay, none of that has anything at all to do with free press. Nothing. Not 1 ounce of any of that said right there.
The conclusion that this rule did not violate the First Amendment, the court determined that, while postal entryways may be open to the public, quote, that fact alone does not establish that such areas must be treated as traditional public fora under the First Amendment.
Now what they're saying there is that those areas don't have to be treated as public fora for free speech. You know, they don't have to be okay with people standing in the entranceways holding signs saying dump Trump or, push Biden down the stairs or whatever it is they're protesting or getting, up in arms about. And that's correct. But again, this has nothing to do with free speech, free press. This has to do with free speech. There's never been a case law that I've seen that anybody's brought to my attention that states that the right to free press is restricted in areas the general public's allowed by the public forum test. I would be more than willing to look over any case law. You could drop that case law in the comment section of this video. Otherwise, if you can't find the case law, please stop saying something so stupid. All right, let's go.
The Postal Service has not expressly dedicated its sidewalks to any expressive activity. Indeed,
Good, because the right to free press isn't an expressive activity. An expressive activity would be like holding signs, holding protests, yelling over bullhorns. That's expressive activity. So, again, expressive activity, free press, two different things. Expressive activity, regulated by the public forum test, absolutely. Free press, regulated by forum activity, the public forum doctrine. Never seen going through here and seeing what else we could find. I know there was some other issues here.
postal property is expressly dedicated to only one means of communication, the posting of public notices on designated bulletin boards. No Postal Service regulation opens postal sidewalks to any First Amendment activity. Thus, the regulation at issue must be analyzed under the standards set forth for non-public fora. It must be reasonable and not an effort to suppress expression merely because public officials oppose the speaker's view. The reasonableness standard is a fairly low bar, and post office officials could likely establish the reasonableness of a blanket prohibition against filming based on security, privacy, or operational concerns.
The rules are posted on the wall, sir. And I just want to make you aware, I'm going to advise the three of you right now that if you make me leave this post office, you're violating my constitutional rights and you're also violating the law. Okay. And I will
9-110 of the Colorado Revised Statute states that, quote, no person shall willfully refuse or fail to leave any public building owned, operated, or controlled by the state, or any of the political subdivisions of the state, or at any building owned, operated, or controlled by the federal government, upon being requested to do so by the chief administrative officer or his designee charged with maintaining order in such public building. If
this is the important part here. Okay, this statute doesn't apply to Jason, and the reason it doesn't apply to Jason is because of this word if and everything that comes after it, okay? But even more so, none of these Colorado statutes apply to Jason, and I'll tell you why, and I'll show you why in just a minute.
a person has
So, none of these Colorado statutes apply to Jason, and I'll tell you why, and I'll show you why in just a minute.
a person has committed, is committing, threatens to commit, or incites others to commit any act which did, or would if completed, disrupt, impair, interfere with, or obstruct the lawful missions, processes, procedures, or functions being carried on in the public building. Additionally, Section 18-4-504 of the Colorado Revised Statute states that, quote, a person commits the crime of third-degree criminal trespass if such person unlawfully enters or remains in or upon premises of another. Section 18-4-504.5 defines premises as, quote, real property, buildings, and other improvements thereon. And Section 18-4-201 clarifies that, quote, a person enters unlawfully or remains unlawfully in or upon premises when the person is not licensed, invited, or otherwise privileged to do so. A person who, regardless of his or her intent, enters or remains in or upon premises that are at the time open to the public does so with license and privilege, unless the person defies a lawful order not to enter or remain.
All right, let's discuss that for a second. What is a lawful order to remain or to not remain? So, let's say there was a racist working at the post office. And let's say there was a racist working at the post office, and he sees a black guy come in, and he says, hey, you got to leave. Is that a lawful order? What about if it's a homophobe, and he sees a gay person in there, and he asks him to leave? He says, hey, you're gay, you got to leave. Is that a lawful order? Obviously not. These are not lawful orders. So we know that not everything that comes out of these people's mouth, regardless of they're authorized or not, is a lawful order. So what is a lawful order? A lawful order is going to be backed up by law. So in order for them to have a lawful order for you to leave a public building, there's going to have to be some kind of disruption. There's going to have to be some kind of disturbance, impediment of business, you know, something along that nature. They can't just willy-nilly just ask people to leave public buildings for not doing anything. You know, can you imagine you're just standing in line waiting to get your stamp? Hey, can you leave? Well, what'd I do? Well, it doesn't matter what you did. I asked you to leave, and that's a lawful order. That's kind of stupid. Um, but the reason that these statutes for Colorado do not apply, we find in United States versus Waits, which is a Ninth Circuit case. And basically, I'll read it here. It says a state law punishing conduct occurring on federal postal property will be assimilated only where the state law is not precluded by postal regulations, and the state law does not punish approximately the same conduct as federal law. Here, subsection 232.1D, and this also would apply to auditors, punishes approximately the same conduct as the Oregon trespass statute. Namely, remaining on premises after being lawfully directed to leave. The state law will not be assimilated because there is no gap here to trigger operation of the non-abrogation clause. To hold otherwise would be to rule that the non-abrogation clause of subsection P2 would have the tendency to trump every relevant federal statute. We do not perceive this to have been the intent of Congress. And that's U.S. versus Waits, Ninth Circuit. All right. All right. So the federal law has already encompassed everything that they wanted it to encompass, and there's no room for the state law to fill any gaps in any criminal matters done on that property. So none of those Colorado statutes apply to them. But if again it did, we could see from the first one that he would have had to be doing something after that if moment. You know, if he had committed a disruption or whatever, and or incited other people. So it's not just walking up to somebody for no reason and being like, hey, you got to leave, and that's a lawful order. So yeah, these guys never get this right. It seems for some reason, I don't know why.